You know, some stories are so powerful they almost defy logic. Stories where a total, catastrophic loss somehow becomes an immortal victory. Today, we're going to dive into one of the greatest of them all, the story of the Spartan king, Leonidas.
So let's just jump right into that, because it's a fantastic question. I mean, how does a battle that ends in complete annihilation, where everybody dies, become a symbol of courage for thousands of years? Well, the answer isn't just in the battle itself, but in the man who led it.
Okay, so let's set the scene. The year is 480 BC. You've got the gigantic Persian Empire, led by the famous King Xerxes, and they're invading Greece. To stop them, a small group of Greek city-states, with Sparta at the head, decides to make a stand at this tiny little coastal pass called Thermopylae.
And when I say a mismatch, I mean the scale of this is just staggering. We're talking about maybe 7,000 Greeks squaring off against an invasion force that historians think was at least 150,000 strong. The odds weren't just bad, they were basically impossible.
And right at the heart of this completely hopeless defense, there's one man, the Spartan king Leonidas. He wasn't just some general. He was the living embodiment of a culture that put duty and sacrifice above literally everything else. But who was this guy before he became a legend?
Let's hit rewind for a second, because to really understand why he did what he did at Thermopylae, you have to understand the world that made him, the incredibly brutal, disciplined, and unique society of ancient Sparta.
So Leonidas was born around 540 BC, but his path to becoming king was anything but a straight line. He was a younger son, and he only got the crown after his, let's call him unstable, older half-brother got kicked off the throne. So he didn't just inherit his power, he really had to earn his way there.
And in Sparta, earning it meant surviving the agoge. This was this insane state-run training program that every single Spartan boy went through. The whole point was to basically strip away their individuality and forge them into a single, deadly weapon for the state. Leonidas was a graduate of this very system.
And this quote, it tells you everything you need to know. When somebody pointed out that he was just a man like any other Spartan, his comeback wasn't about his royal blood. It was about merit. He was basically saying, I'm king because I'm better. I proved it in the same system that made all of us.
So we've got a battle-hardened king leading a massively outnumbered army. But there's another layer to this, a twist of fate that turned what was already a defense mission into a straight-up suicide pact. See, before they marched off, the Spartans went to the oracle at Delphi.
And the prophecy the oracle gave them was chilling, and it was crystal clear. To save Sparta, a Spartan king had to die. So Leonidas marched to Thermopylae knowing this. Think about that. He wasn't just going to fight a battle. He was going to fulfill a prophecy.
Which brings us to the battle itself. Knowing his fate, knowing the odds, Leonidas and his tiny force get to the hot gates of Thermopylae to make their stand.
For 2 solid days, the impossible actually happens. The Greeks hold the pass. They use the narrow terrain perfectly and just inflict insane casualties on the Persians. But then, the betrayal. A local shows the Persians a hidden path through the mountains. Suddenly, the Greeks are about to be surrounded. The fight is over. And that's when Leonidas makes his final, legendary decision. He dismisses most of the army, but he and a small group stay behind to fight to the last man.
Now, here's a crucial detail that the legend often forgets. He didn't stay alone with just his Spartans. Of course, his 300 Spartans stayed, but so did 700 soldiers from a city called Thespiae. They chose to stay. They refused to leave. On the other hand, the 400 Thebans who were there ended up surrendering. So that heroic final stand, it was the Spartans and the Thespians side by side in a sacrifice that is way too often overlooked.
In the final, vicious struggle, Leonidas was killed, and King Xerxes was so enraged by the losses his massive army took from this tiny force that he broke with tradition and ordered the Spartan king's body to be desecrated. But all that did was pour fuel on the fire of the legend of the man he could never break in life.
So the battle was lost, the king was dead, a total military disaster. But this is actually where the story really begins. The defeat at Thermopylae became a rallying cry, the very thing that inspired Greece to eventually come together and crush the Persian invasion.
And nothing, I mean nothing, captures the spirit of that stand better than this phrase. When Xerxes demanded the Greeks lay down their weapons, Leonidas's reply was supposedly just 2 words, malon labe, come and take them. It's maybe the ultimate statement of defiance in all of human history.
And that defiance has echoed for centuries. Back in Sparta, they created a hero cult just for him.
His story became a cornerstone of Western history, this timeless symbol of courage against tyranny, of sacrificing yourself for the greater good. It is a story that we are, obviously, still telling today. And you can still see his legacy, literally cast in bronze. There are modern monuments in Greece, of course, at the battle site and in Sparta, but his legend has gone totally global. There's a statue of him as far away as Australia, put up as recently as 2009. It's just a modern testament to how universal his story really is.
Which brings us right back to our original question. A defeat becomes immortal not because of what happened, but because of the choice. Leonidas' stand was a conscious decision. He was armed with a prophecy of his own death, and he chose to transform that military loss into a symbol so powerful it would inspire victory long after he was gone. So, what makes a sacrifice legendary? Maybe it's not just dying for a cause. Maybe it's about choosing to write a story with your own life that will outlive you forever.